Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joining today, he's a shark attack survivor, speaker, storyteller, athlete, entrepreneur. It's Caleb Swanepoel. How are you doing today, Caleb?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Alex. It's a privilege to be here. And yeah, having a great day. I hope you are too.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what you like doing growing up.
So I am from South Africa, tip of the continent of Africa. Grew up in a very, very small town in the Karoo, which is a semi-arid desert area. Homeschooled. My mom raised five kids in the desert. It's always a narrative I tell people. And yeah, grassroots upbringing, barefoot. Playing hockey on the local rugby field, sharing the local tennis courts with we call them the bullies, the older generation and the town. And yeah, I had a really, really simple upbringing, hiking, swimming, lots of outdoor sports. And with four siblings, they keep you busy as well. And in a small town, everyone knows each other. So that was pretty much the upbringing. And yeah, really, really grateful to come from that space. And it's still a place I call home today. I live in Cape Town now, which is about 4 hours away, the mother city, as people call it. But yeah, grateful to come from Prince Albert, which is and shout out to that town, man. Anyone who's been there will know it's a special place. I think you being where you are in Missouri, there's when you go on a road trip and you go through those little towns,
Yes.
they always leave an impression. And Prince Albert's one of those towns that very much leaves an impression. So yeah, proud to come from there.
It's amazing to go to like those local destinations or those small spots because like you said that everyone knows each other. You see that kind of the community aspect when you go into those towns where it's like the
Yeah,
bigger cities, it's like you could go to the same place and see different people every single time you go to that same spot. So it's just
yeah.
amazing those local towns. When you were growing up, was it always something that was instilled in you to be outdoors, enjoy the outdoors, find like that athletic or that kind of activities that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I think, coming from a small town, you naturally don't have as much, concrete, just both, physically and also in the sort of meta meaning around that. Just you don't have this concrete jungle that you're navigating where, you go to a mall to shop and you go to the cinema. You go to the local market on a Saturday and you have pancakes and you have, we call it boerewors rolls, so like basically like hot dogs and just like really, really chilled outdoor vibes. Braai culture is a very big thing in South Africa. It's called barbecuing in the States, I think.
Mhm.
And so lots of like, social outdoor kind of interactions. And then we've got the mountains right at the foot of the town. So grew up grew up hiking and getting outdoors. And I think my family's always kind of been like that. When they were kids, they did hiking. They cycled and did things not necessarily at an elite level, but definitely, yeah, just part of the genes. And I think, um, my granddad played quite a pivotal role growing up as well, in getting us outdoors and getting us into spaces that challenged us a little bit. And it's in the title of your podcast, I think. um, Type 2 fun where you really enjoy the process of challenging yourself a little bit, but then you really enjoy getting to that end point. So it's not necessarily about going from A to Z, but all the letters in between, and then also enjoying the end is kind of what I think being in the outdoors is like, because you have to deal with the elements, you have to deal with different terrain, you have to deal
Yep.
with endurance. Whether it's a 5K walk, 5 mile walk, or whether it's a long 3, 4 day hike. Um, and if it's there from the beginning, it's kind of normal. So yeah, it's kind of always been there. Nowadays, there's different things that kind of throw spanners in the works, as you know. We'll get to that, I guess. But yeah, I think it's something that if you can appreciate being in the outdoors, like it leads into so many other things. The the world. If you look at nature and spending time in nature, that's how it was before humans got there. Um, and I think to be able to go back into those kinds of spaces and get quiet, get present. Um, Again, it's necessary, but also it's a privilege.
With all of those activities that you did, was there one that kind of stuck out as your favorite, or one that kind of really taught you some skills that you didn't know that you had in you?
Running, definitely. I think I was very, very keen on getting onto the trails and getting um getting my shoes on and just pushing myself a little bit. Specifically with like 10-kilometer runs. I mean, I was a teenager, so I was basically focusing on that specific distance. So yeah, like I think that sport specifically, it's an individual sport. It's a sport
Mhm.
where you have to really have a bit of an internal dialogue with yourself when you do get tired, when you do get that exhaustion. And yeah, I think it teaches you how to kind of push through and have stamina and get to that final destination without cracking completely. We're not talking about a David Goggins ultra 100 miler race here. We're talking about getting a bit muddy, getting a bit wet, running through rivers, and also like I really loved running because it took me to different places, around the mountain, on different trails, and it's free. So if you go to a city, if you go to a new place, you put your running shoes on and your workout's done, but you've also you can really see a city and you can really see a town by running through it. So yeah, I think definitely running for me stands out as um quite a impactful sport that I did. And then I also loved tennis. I've grown up watching tennis, and I'm a huge Rafael Nadal fan. And then being able to play on weekends just with family and with locals in the town, um, yeah, became quite part of the weekend culture. Um, so yeah.
The tennis was something I grew up loving to do. Like anytime I was
Okay.
family or friends, tennis. And you talked about Rafael Nadal is yours. Andy Roddick was mine because
Okay.
growing up in the
Big
same,
serve.
yeah. And I always was
And
like,
he's USA, so of course.
yeah, it was just so fascinating. And then now I watch tennis and I'm like, I don't know any of these names. So it's like fun to like
Mm.
learn even more about them watching it because I haven't stayed up with it in like so
Okay.
long. But nowadays I'm getting back into playing a lot more on the weekends when it's nice weather outside because there's just something fun about being on the court. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
enjoying where you talked about how running is an individual sport, where tennis sometimes can be individual unless you're doing doubles, but you kind of see, okay, where are you strong at? Where do you need to get better at? And running, you have
Yeah.
that same mentality as, okay, am I good at the beginning of a race? Or do I need to work on the beginning because I excel at the end of the race? Things like that, it kind of helps you learn even more about yourself.
Mm. Definitely. And also, you have someone pushing you. So, with running, unless you have a running partner, tennis is quite accessible when it comes to having someone pushing you on the court, teaching you more about your game, like you
Yep.
said, and then also it teaches you about strategy. It teaches you about spotting weaknesses. Hopefully, you don't capitalize on those too much if you're playing a friendly social game, um, and teaches you, oh man, like patience and stamina and all those different types of things. I've never played on different surfaces. I've only played on hard court. But then if you start crossing surfaces, just you watch how like Nadal's the king of clay. Roger Federer was, stands out as one of the best grass court players. And then you've got, players like Djokovic that are just like these complete machines that can do it across all the courts, So um I think it really becomes really interesting when you start bringing that into play as well. But yeah, tennis can get competitive as well, even at an amateur level. People take it super seriously, and they step onto the court with their sweatbands and their whole bag, and like yeah, it's still like it can still be intimidating, even at an amateur level. I don't know how seriously you take your tennis though on weekends when it's sunny that side.
Not that serious. I'm like,
Okay.
if I can make it to the end, I'm happy. I don't have the sweatbands. I mean, I got the sunglasses on. I'm trying to look.
Oh, there we go. Okay. But you got some of the gear. That's another thing that's so interesting is, you know, the cool thing about sports is that there's also a gear component.
Yep.
And I think there's this big there's this big shift in even your corporate spaces of seeing people embrace active wear and gear, like a smart training watch, for example, versus a dress watch. There's a
Mhm.
shift towards um, fitness apparel that makes you. It also, it's a conversation starter. Oh, okay, are you a triathlete? Are you a runner? Are you a swimmer? It gets a conversation going, and even clothing is starting to blend into this sort of versatile space of you could have gone for a run in that shirt, but you can also go to work in it, especially in the tech space. Like people are embracing like a lot of like this cross dressing, I guess. And the cool thing about doing a new sport or when you first start, it's just you want to buy the gear, and the
Yeah.
gear is kind of sometimes the thing that like hooks you. I look at cycling, and I mean cycling, the gear is just like you can go from A to Z when it comes to the wheels even on your bike and the weight, and then you have the Roka glasses. Shout out to Roka, I guess. And then you've got your sports wearables, and then you've got your electrolyte drink you're drinking, and then you've got your heart rate monitor, and then you've got your mountain bike and you've got your road bike. So and then over the weekends you meet a fellow cyclist enthusiast, and you can chat about gear for the whole day. Um, and I suppose it's finding these commonalities, and I suppose that's how communities form, is just shared values and shared interests, and it kind of all stems from that. If you look at the Patagonia narrative, it was just around someone, Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, um, not having the equipment he needed, starting to make his own equipment, and then kind of handing it out to the community of climbers, and that whole community just grew this massive business um, from a very specific need, but also started with gear, and they just slowly branched it out. Oh, now we need gear for cold weather climbing. Let's build that. Which is also so exciting because I think we're in a very interesting time where we can we have access to tools to make and create things. You know, I went to the States and I was in Colorado for the first time. Um, unbelievable space. I mean, I grew up with westerns and cowboy movies and country music, and just kind of found myself in that space. I was absolutely blown away, but also just met met some really cool people, but found some really cool outdoor brands. Like Topo was an outdoor brand that I came across in Colorado, and just Colorado-based business creating outdoor gear, and like
Yep.
it's just like a really good hamburger. You just want to like dig your teeth into it and get going. Um, yeah.
Something that we are always asked growing up is what's that dream job that we're always pursuing? I'm going to ask you that. What was that dream job that you were wanting to do when you grew up?
So, it was really to play uh, Hugh Jackman's son in a film. Being completely and it's still very much a goal of mine. So if Hugh Jackman ever watches this, I have an acting degree, and let's go, man. So yeah, I mean, I grew up with lots of musicals and a lot of the old movies, and grew up doing drama and storytelling and a bit of theater. And yeah, it was my passion to get into the acting space. And I was a huge fan of Wolverine. I mean, I just was a huge fan of Hugh Jackman and his versatility as an actor, as a theater kid. I was absolutely I'm still very much in love with Hugh Jackman. So shout out to him, one of my heroes. And yeah, the goal was to connect with him one day. Him and Ryan Reynolds, those are two of my favorite people in the whole world. So yeah, that was the goal, to play Wolverine's son in a Marvel movie, I guess.
That would be
It
pretty cool.
hasn't happened yet.
I mean, what they're going to make like 20 more Marvel movies or who knows how many? I mean, they're like already coming out with like the next 10 that's coming out. So you never know. You never know what could happen.
Never know. I mean, with the writer's strike at the moment, it's interesting times in the
Yeah.
States. So yeah, there's lots of movement there as well. That's again spanners in the works. To see what unfolds is going to be interesting, and even that's a story in itself. People kind of standing up for themselves, and really leaning into something that is affecting them. and taking the stance and making noise about it because it's relevant, and people need to hear, people need to listen. So, and that's the cool thing about storytelling, is just that not everyone, not every story is for everyone to kind of hear and
Yeah.
engage with. Um, but it's really great when people do listen to your story and people do engage and people do find something that they can take away. I mean, that's why we always look back into the past, I think, and find we search for meaning. We search for meaning in history, we search for meaning in our own stories, we search for meaning in our friends and family around us. In music we listen to, it's all there, man. I think that's why storytelling is such a beautiful thing. It crosses so many different mediums. Even selling is storytelling. Um,
Mhm.
it's a storytelling. You know. So yeah, but I'm really keen to connect with you one day. And he was at Wimbledon final actually. I saw him there in the stands. I mean, I wasn't there; I was watching on TV. But you know, these things are all possible. The world's become a very, very, very small place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very possible that it could happen one day. And if it does, it'll be great.
You talked about an acting degree. Is there a performance that you've done that's like memorable in your time as a theater kid?
I think when I was growing up, playing curly in Oklahoma stands out as one of the things I enjoyed. Not going to practice my singing voice today, but definitely, you know, doing a small bit of Oklahoma, and it was a role that Hugh Jackman had also done. So I'd watched his film for inspiration. And then there's just some really cool projects we did at theatre school, where you get to just step into different characters and kind of embrace different worlds. And yeah, Sam Shepard is one of the kind of playwrights that I think is like a really awesome playwright. Uh, fa- uh, I think I'm trying to remember the right type of realism that it is, but it's realism with an element of fantasy or an element of magic. I'm just trying to, I don't know what the right genre is for that, but it's like suspended realism where it's not quite, there's something else in the air. There's something else there in the story that kind of touches on a sense of like magic in a way, and a sense of non-reality. So yeah.
With getting that degree, after you got it, did you know the path that you wanted to go, or did you follow a different path and it led you to a different area?
So yeah, I mean we can get straight into it there. I mean my life changed very dramatically in 2015. I I was first year acting, studying at university in South Africa, and I lost my leg. I was in a shark attack, and 6 months into your first bout of studying as a young adult, you've got lots of questions in your head and lots of things
Mm.
flying around. And I think my shark attack changed changed everything. But then also didn't change everything. It changed everything, but didn't change everything. And I think it is still something I'm processing and working through today. And I can be very very honest about that. That's sets a different um, set of actions and motions in place that kind of have gone adjacent to everything else that's happened in my life. So um, I went back to my acting degree after I lost my leg. I didn't know I was going to be able to, but I did, and I finished my first year of studies on crutches actually, and continued acting. And yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen after that degree. I studied entrepreneurship, like a business postgraduate after that, to kind of find a way to pull this creativity into a business space, and ended up um, in tech and in sales and in doing some exciting things in that space, and it's the space I'm in at the moment, but also got involved with sport. And the ocean's become a very powerful place for me, and storytelling's become powerful for me, and sharing my stories become powerful for me as well. So um, yeah, I didn't quite know where things were going to land. All I knew when I first started my degree was that I don't know if I'm going to do this if I do something else right now. So the two options were, a business science degree in geology or acting, and I got in for this acting degree, and I thought, I don't want to have regrets one day and look back and have not have followed through with something that I'm really passionate about. And in hindsight, it's been about four years since I graduated from acting school, and I've kept kind of, excuse the pun, but I've kept one foot in the door with the creative space, and
Mhm.
the creative community are awesome people. We all wounded, broken bodies. In whatever shape or form you want to put that, we all broken in some way, I believe, and not in the negative way. Just to go, we are perfectly imperfect, and I think the creative space is one of the spaces that really tries to embrace that, embrace your uniqueness where you can, and it's allowed me to start pulling apart the the trauma I've experienced, I guess, and start to try find ways to share that, but also I still go to castings. I'm going to get involved with some theatre, which is really, really exciting. I get to do some speaking, um, and I get to also bump into those human beings where there's shared commonality, and get to appreciate theatre and things like that. So I still don't have all the answers about where I'm going to go in life. I know I wanted to be creative with people. Um, I want to share the energy I have for life with the world. This is one way of doing that. Even coming on and meeting you and being able to talk and connect is powerful. The fact that this can go and other people can engage with this is great. Whether this is for someone or one person or 1,000 people doesn't matter. It's also a privilege for myself to kind of sit and if I want to make the choice about being honest
Yeah.
and being open about how I feel. And also, when it comes to trauma, people think that, well, I sometimes think that people assume if you're a survivor, if you've overcome this big thing, that's it's more your own insecurity, I guess. Like sometimes I feel like I have to have all my shit together and have to have everything perfect because I've survived this traumatic experience, which it was. But I think there's power in vulnerability and being honest about, you know, the the journey of life is very much an experience and an
Yep.
experiment. And I want to embrace that as well because that's real. And if I can be honest like this to you on a screen, over the phone, on a podcast, um, there's nothing to hide really. This is who I am.
With surviving a shark attack, did you ever get nervous after going back into bodies of water? Where knowing a little bit more about you with how we've connected, I know that maybe wasn't the case, but at the initial time, was any
Mm,
going back in there knowing that, well, I've gone through something horrific before,
mm,
but I can't let this stop me because I enjoy being out in the water. This is like
mm,
a happy place for me, and I want to
mm,
not be afraid because people listening that have gone it, you are kind of that inspiration to them where they're able to look at you and say, well, he's out there doing it. He's not letting anything stop him. And you kind of mentioned that this attack didn't stop you from doing what you wanted to do in life.
mm.
You kept going, you're doing everything. But talk about that. Did it kind of get you nervous to go back out there in water?
Yeah. Yo, I think there's a very big moment where you're nervous to carry on with everything and anything. We'll get to the water part, but just like I call it a rebirth. It's what's going to happen after this,
Yep.
and am I going to be okay, and what's life going to look like, and will I be able to run again? I mean, I haven't been able to get a blade yet, a running blade, so I haven't run in 8 years. And it's kind of weird saying that, like, and being okay with saying that, or not being okay with saying that,
Mhm.
right? Um, so I think there was a moment where you kind of sit and you go, well, what now? What are things going to look like? And I think it's really important to know that you can never have the full picture in front of you. So if I look at my journey over the last 8 years, I would never have thought that I would be where I am now. Not in terms of it's 10 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, just in terms of my journey and where life has taken me. Would never been able to predict that as a starting point. Um, and by taking action, you start to set in motion waves. You start to set in motion changes. There's a really beautiful kind of image of pebbles in the water creating ripples.
Mhm.
You drop a pebble in the ocean, you drop a pebble in a pond, that ripple starts here, but it ends up, you know, somewhere else, and you don't
Yep.
always know where that ripple is going to go. So, and getting back into the ocean is a really good one. Um, I didn't have a lot of fear the first time I went back in. It was very, very strange because I hopped into the ocean. I didn't have my leg anymore, and I'm so used to running into the sea and feeling 2 feet in the sand, And I said it to someone the other day, next time you go to the beach and you walking on the sand, just dig all 10 toes in and just feel what it feels like. Just get really present. I think my experience has forced me to sometimes get very, very present because it's forced me to slow down. And it's forced me to think about my movement and think about how am I going to get and navigate this space, physically. And getting into the sea and being in deep water, that brought a bit of fear the first time. The first time I was not, on a surfboard or fully suspended, and on a boat, or I could stand. And when you're in the deep water, you feel that volume of water below you. You feel that depth, and that depth can be like standing on a cliff and knowing you're going to jump off. It's a similar kind of feeling, and it's dark down there sometimes, and there's seaweed, and you start to ask questions and you start to look around a little bit more than you would usually do. And I think that's when sometimes the fear kind of creeps up and kind of circles back, like a shark circles back and kind of meets you there, and you go, okay, wait, take a deep breath, slow down. What am I feeling in this moment? And what's really helped me is having someone that I can train with and go out into the ocean with. Not that they're the bait, but just that I can just say, hey, Alex, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. Um, I just want you to know, and you
Mhm.
need to be honest about that. Like if we can, and I think it's a really great thing that we can take into any environment. If you're having a tough week and you keep it all to yourself, that can be really challenging. But if you can find a way to say to your partner or your friend, um, or a colleague, someone in your space, and just be honest about how you're feeling, to tell them the whole narrative, there's a weight that kind of sometimes kind of gets lifted off your shoulders, and okay, there's a brothers in arms kind of feel there, and that's really, really helped me. But I have moments when I'm in the water where I do get scared, and I think that's another thing. It's a comment on fear. Fear never goes away, but you can face it and you can have a conversation with it and you can talk about it, um, as opposed to just putting in a little black box,
Yep.
putting it over there and just never engaging with it. So, and it's the same thing with trauma, like there's ways of going back to trauma and processing it that I think takes a lifetime sometimes, but it's possible. I think if I hadn't made certain decisions early on with my trauma and what I had experienced, what I have experienced, I don't think I would be where I am today. And that's really a testament to the people in my circle, like my family and my friends who haven't let me feel sorry for myself, you know, and kind of, yeah, allow me to wallow in my misery because we've got one life, man.
Yep.
Um, we've got one life, and not that you need to count every second, but I'm very lucky to still be here, regardless of the challenges. And yeah, I'd like still be here for a few more years if possible. Hopefully not another shark attack, you know.
Yeah,
Hopefully
we
it's
don't
from
need
the beach
another
one
one.
day.
Something you talked about just recently was your friends and family, your inner circle really kind of helping you through the process. And I want to get into that because there's a lot of people that are listening to this that they've gone through a trauma, maybe a
Mm,
diagnosis or something.
mm,
And it really plays an effect with them when they're trying to keep those friends that are with them because sometimes friendships change because they've gone through something and those friends don't know how to ask or they're afraid to ask those things where you are currently with that inner circle, friends and family, are you
mm.
wanting them to be open if they have questions about what you're going through or the experiences that you have been challenged with? Then not mention anything at all. And it makes people feel
Mm,
uncomfortable to ask.
mm. I think it's a really good question because it ties into a bigger question like how do you want people to show up for you?
Mhm.
And it ties into also how do you want to show up for other people and then show up for yourself. Um, I think it depends on the energy you put out as well. So if I put out the energy to Alex and once a week you're gonna get a voice note from Caleb and it's gonna be a 6 minute ramble of whatever's happening in his life, or my socket's broken and I'm gonna tell you all my problems, or you're not gonna hear from me and you know that I go internal with my challenges and where I'm at. It's often, yeah, I think it can be tricky, but I think that behavior is quite indicative of just sometimes how you would like to be supported. So I know that I love people checking in and hanging out and connecting, and it's often in just the connecting part that just creates a safe space for you to share. So for me, um, I it'll be around an activity. Like let's say you and I have a coffee, we can hang out and just if I know I can trust you,
Yep.
then just like you said with your podcast, you don't want to necessarily dictate and guide every single question and talking point. You want to create space for a conversation to flow and for it to happen and for who the person is on the other end for that to come out. Hopefully, you know, nothing too insane or hectic, and then what is too insane or hectic? I digress. But I think for me, yeah, I'm open to all questions and support from friends. I think it's really great when you can have you can put out the energy for people to learn because it's all about learning. How can I show up for you? And also ask that, like, hey man, how's the week going? Like, how are you doing? The last time we spoke, you said you were in a bit of pain. How's it going? Not that I can solve all your problems, but just having a space, I think, for me to share and be open and honest about how things are, I think it really helps. And that comes down to people being able to listen. It's a skill that I have a lot of work to do on. People always say like you talk a lot and you don't listen. So I feel a little bit bad for speaking today, for speaking so much on this. But you have asked me to share, so I'm sharing. But I think, and people just are there to listen and they can just, that's holding space, man. That's holding space. And I think that can be very powerful. Um, and also for you to be honest, I think it's really good to be honest about how you're feeling and where you're at. It's not always easy to share everything.
Yep.
And I think everyone will have those one or two people in their lives where they can really just be themselves, and that's really, really great. Um, so yeah, I think it comes down to that, and then the more you lean into just what feels right, um, the more people will know in a weird way how to support you. Um, it's like one of my friends sometimes always say like you go quite quiet sometimes and you kind of disappear from the face of the earth. And I just said, yeah, just when things get very busy and tumultuous, that like I disconnect a little bit, but then there's always a full circle and it kind of comes back. So I'd be curious to know if that resonates with you and if there's something, yeah, I suppose like how do you like to people how not that I'm you asking all the questions, but I'm curious to know how you as Alex like people to show up for you? Do you like that honesty and vulnerability? Do you like people kind of putting themselves in your space and checking in with you, or do you like to kind of go from the internal space and look for that outward support?
It's interesting you asked me that because I always have this conversation with some family members and friends because I view friendships as a two-way street. Like you got
Mm,
to give on both sides. And I have gone through a medical condition for the last 17 years. And I've always said, I'd rather my friends ask me than never ask me. And then something happens and they are not prepared for what's happening. So I'm a type 1
mm,
diabetic. So I am going through stuff every day, and I try to be open with my friends about the struggles that I go through
mm,
because I want them to be knowledgeable in that. But when talking about the connecting with the friends, I wish my friends connected and asked me more. How are my days going? And things like
mm,
that.
mm,
Because I feel that I put it out there. And if you are real friends, you want to check in on that person. It doesn't have to be every day. And like
mm,
you're saying, how are you doing every day? That's because that person cares about how are you doing that day because you might have a good
mm,
positive day one day and then negative the next day. And that friend might see the change and they might be like, okay, I need to be there for that person and want to be knowing what's happening if I can do anything. It's always been a conversation I've had with some of my friends because sometimes I don't feel that they're asking me, how am I doing? I'm always the first one sending the message. Why can't they send the
mm.
message back to me?
Yes, yes, yes. Why did you ask me out for a coffee? Come on, man. Like, I'm always pushing here. And then there's two things there. I think 100%. I think you're 100% right. And I think it's really great when it comes from that side and that support comes from the other side. The other side is that not everyone is gonna move and operate in the world like you do. So
Exactly. Yep.
if you're an extrovert and it's really easy for you to just like pop a message to be like, let's do this. And you feed off that energy. Like for me, I feed off other people's energy and I love connecting. That might not be someone else's vibe. So, if they connect with you once a month and they can be the best friend in the whole world, but they don't need to see you every day. Whereas you might need that interaction. And it goes into a whole bigger conversation of, are you also okay with your own company? Are you also okay with knowing you have that support, but also being able to process things and sit in your own silence a little bit? And I think that's where I have a lot of work to do is just um is being comfortable being alone, being comfortable being and not alone like I'm alone in the whole world, but hey, like there's nothing happening this evening. Can I just sit with my thoughts,
Yeah.
And I think what's really great about bringing it back to sports and bringing it back to challenging things, those are really great spaces to really listen to that internal dialogue. If you're doing swimming in a lap pool, you and you're not, and let's say you're just doing it by yourself, and you don't have your coach, you're sitting with your thoughts. If you want to cycle through the hills, you're sitting with your thoughts, even if you are sometimes, riding in a group. And I think individual sport has this really beautiful way of forcing you to get present sometimes. Another one is I love cold water. Cold exposure is a really great way of getting present. I think I joined Threads recently because I've never been able to do Twitter for some reason. But I joined Threads because it's right straight through Instagram, and I posted something that just came out the other day, and if you want to get present, like just have a cold shower. It's
Yeah.
so simple, it just sometimes, yeah, those small little challenges, those small little moments of stress, controlled stress, really force you to get present because we love to distract ourselves. We distract ourselves with personal development books and podcasts and and Netflix and people consume porn, people consume food, alcohol, like whatever it is, right? There's all of those things that kind of can layer in front of us instead of kind of letting it all brush away. Um, but like Dorothy in Kansas, I know Kansas is close to Missouri, so I hope I'm on the
Yes.
right track there.
Yep.
Um, So yeah, I think it's really interesting, but I think, like no man is an island phrase is quite true. Um, I, again, if I bring it back to like my family, my mom homeschooled us, and the school is still running today. It's now a non-profit organization. Um, so many people have come through Albert College, and and I always say my mom's one of my heroes. She was on the beach that day with me as well. My brothers were in the water with me. My brother saved my life. So, I wouldn't be here without my family, purely because I wouldn't have survived getting out of the ocean. Yes, a miracle happened that day as well, that my femoral artery went into spasm. So when the shark took my leg off, um, I should have bled out completely. I had 2 minutes to live, and for some reason, my femoral artery closed. And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have made it out of the ocean. But the fact that my brother turned around, swam back towards me, and pulled me out, um, I don't know why. It's hard to put that into words, and that comes down to the power of what a community can be, and if you really distill that down, like family or chosen family, you don't have to be blood to be family. And I think that's the beautiful thing as well. Like there's people that come into your life where you just go, like, okay, this is chosen family, and I've got a new brother or sister, father or mother, and grandfather. Like, what? I've got a grandfather. He's not my grandfather. Who I just say this is my grandfather. His name is Bulky, and he's also from Prince Albert. Traveled the world, has done everything from politics to running a restaurant to um, climbing, boxing, and has most incredible stories. And to go home and sit down with him and have a coffee and talk about life. Again, time is invaluable, right? How do you put a price on that? Um, and it's beautiful to have people in your life that you can go to and you can just be yourself. So, but yeah, it also requires, I think, there's work that you have to do as well. That allows relationships to thrive, allows people to show up for you in a specific way because you're also doing some work. And not that we always need to be working, doing the work. There's also that pressure of like, oh, like, have you done this or have you done that? Like sometimes, and hopefully I really believe more of this as I get older, but to speed up, you just slow down sometimes. Because the noise can sometimes distract us.
Well, even
Sorry,
with
that was a
no, you're
ramble.
good, you're good. But you talked about like I've learned over time that you have to pick your battles when it comes to it. Like, yeah, they might not be there, but I see value in that friendship more than getting petty over that one small little thing. And I'd rather them be a friend than
Mm,
get mad at them because they don't respond to me and stuff. And I
mm,
just have to learn and kind of navigate. This is their style. I'm just going to have to work around it. And I went to a soccer game with some friends, and I saw a friend that I'm really best friends with, but maybe not the best texter in the world, but
Communication. Yeah,
communication. But when I saw
yeah.
him, it's like we picked it up where we last
Yeah.
like, and then after that, you kind of just were like, okay, what's the next thing we're doing? It kind of just started like a revolving door. But
Mm.
you talked about sports has been such a big part of your life. Looking at your time surfing, is there an accomplishment that you've gotten that is memorable to you today?
I think, you know, I was never a surfer before I lost my leg. And everyone just assumes that, you survived a shark attack, you must have been a surfer. And that was never the case. So I think learning to surf, for the first time, um, I think I'd gone surfing once for a lesson. That was it before I lost my leg. So learning to surf for the first time, I think it kind of happened by chance because my siblings were going for a surfing lesson and they just said, "Oh, do you want to try?"
Mhm.
And at the time, I didn't even have a surfing leg. The one I have now is been made like DIY with like, an engineer and surfboard shaper. There aren't even surfing prosthetics that are out. So, but before I even had that prosthetic, I used my normal walking leg, and I think seeing just how much is still possible
Mhm.
with one leg, specifically just from a balance perspective, and being able to go from a 9 foot board, 9.6 foot board down to now a 6 foot, 6 foot 6 board. Um, and taking that for granted a little bit, I think is pretty epic. Just the fact that I can even do that with one leg. And I think one of the things that stands out is going to world champs and going to surf and visit the States for the first time ever, in 2016, and to represent my country and to wave our South African flag and to sing our songs, and to meet new people. I think that's really something that stands out for me. And I've now done it 3 times. Last year was the third time. We went to California, Pismo, just past Los Angeles. So between Los Angeles and San Francisco, we went to all the champs there. And you've got like 30 countries, 180 athletes, all with different disabilities, surfing, and representing their countries, and your family's watching back home. It's actually live streamed, which is amazing. So I think just being part of that parasport world, and just seeing the other people with disabilities and seeing what they can achieve, puts things in perspective. Um, and I just think, yeah, being able to wear the green and gold for my country, and knowing I'm a Springbok athlete, it's you need to use it more as a layer of confidence, because it's great, it's epic. But I think, because I've never thought about that growing up, it was never something that kind of was in my frame of reference, and now it's become accessible to be in a professional kind of circle of athletes, um, and it's really 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 incredible. And I think there's also an opportunity to raise awareness for parasport, because it kind of goes unseen. I'll tell people about parasurfing, and they don't even know what parasurfing means.
Mhm.
It's just surfing if you have a disability, really. But I think there's really an awesome opportunity that you have if you have a disability and you are interested in sport, and you are able to qualify for certain things, for you to kind of bring these two worlds together. And I think that's what's really exciting for me. Is like it sounds like it sounds like a very like funny thing it sounds quite, I don't know, maybe childish, but I want to make disability cool. I think, yes, there's challenges for everyone, but I want people to see like, hey, having disability is not necessarily this negative thing. It's something that, yeah, no, shitty things happen, and if I could have my leg back, yeah, I'd say yes, but it's not growing back. No one's bringing it to me unless someone knocks on the door now and hands it to me and reattaches it, or the shark decides to, go looking for it in the ocean. If those things don't happen, then what do? You've got to carry on. You've got to still take a deep breath in and keep going, and put one foot in front of the other. And I think the world is starting to listen more. The world's excited to see more inclusion and diversity. There's so much value to offer the world, from a storytelling perspective, from an innovation perspective, from a technology perspective, and for the able-bodied community and the disabled community, for those two things to kind of exist more cohesively, is really something I'm excited about. Um, like, why can't Pharrell Williams, who's running Louis Vuitton, put an amputee on his next runway, or someone in a wheelchair, or someone with that's visually impaired? Um, it's really good for brands because it's inclusive, but also it's really good to highlight and showcase, um, that part of the community that is underrepresented. I saw something really interesting today that happened in the States. They called it the Capitol Crawl, I think, and a whole lot of individuals during the Bush era, they were fighting for disabled rights in the country, and they literally left their wheelchairs and their crutches and their motorized wheelchairs at the bottom of the the Capitol building stairs, and they called up the stairs to the top of the Capitol building. And then the government passed the and if, excuse me if I'm wrong with the phrasing, but the American Disability Act, which was passed, which was the most profound act, I think, for people that had disabilities in the country at the time. So, yeah, and to see that, I mean, that's inspiring, you know. And I think the other thing about having seen all these different stories and narratives, you don't necessarily have to go through that thing in order to feel to be grateful to be alive and to be grateful to have all your limbs. You know, we're not. I don't think I'm asking someone to go and lose their leg in order to understand how I feel. But if I can share a little bit of my journey, what I've gone through with someone who, whatever their walk of life is, it changes their perspective. Even hearing that, that you have diabetes, that's a challenge I'm not familiar with, and that I also need to be educated around, and a space that if I understand how you need to kind of operate, and like if you need to have an insulin pen or whatever it is, and then I can also show up as a friend and show up and support you. And the curious thing there is that like no one sees that, with a physical disability, people see it, whether they are fascinated by it, whether they are, curious, whether they, feel embarrassed to ask questions, um, whether they, are non-inclusive, whatever that is, they see it and you can see the response. Whereas there's certain challenges that people have, that they have to deal with, and they are dealing with, that sometimes are hidden. Case in point, what do you have to kind of focus on in the day, or challenge that you have? And it's great that you can be honest and open and also share that, because then people can show up, and also get educated, like you said. And I think it's just an exciting time, and I think we need more people to be brave and to just kind of go, hey, this is who I am. Um, fire away.
Something our listeners like is to learn a little bit more about our guests. As we've been on this journey with you, when you're
Mm.
doing your free time, what else do you enjoy doing?
So, yeah. Okay, going home is a huge highlight for me. And going to the Karoo. I bought hiking poles, I think just over a year ago, and I started getting onto trails again. I went up a mountain in Cape Town that I'd never been up before, even when I was a kid, called Lion's Head, which is really, really great. Um, I am really, really excited about the ocean. So I spend a lot of time in the ocean, but I also just enjoy open water swimming. So I get into the ocean, do open water swimming. Um, we actually made a short film recently about free diving. We did it in collaboration with a UK diving brand, and we've taken it to, it's now hopefully 4 international ocean film festivals, and outdoor film festivals, and that's why I went to Colorado for that project, and tapping into a bit of storytelling, which is really, really great. I also love ice water exposure, so I'm a huge fan of cold showers, and I'm going with a group called Ice Tribe. I'm actually joining them tomorrow to get into 4 degrees Celsius water, do some Wim Hof breathing, and kind of get present and get connected. Um, I love podcasts. I'm a huge fan of various podcasters out there. I mean, I started my podcast journey with Joe Rogan, who is just, you need to have 3 hours to just kind of sit and listen to how conversations go. But then I've more recently leaned into Rich Roll, who just is just such an inspiring individual, and really, really just encouraging, with how he unpacks people's stories and how he kind of shares them. I'm a huge tea drinker. I love my tea. I grew up with just drinking lots and lots of tea. So for me, home is making a pot of tea, having, a bowl of rusks. I think in the States, you would say it's in between a biscuit and a cookie. But like we make rusks in South Africa, they're like, I don't know, rectangular shaped cookies that are more dense, and you have to dunk them in the tea to soak the water up and kind of eat them, which is great. And then I've recently gotten into paddle. So paddle is, yeah, I think people know about paddle. Um, Paddle's just become really accessible for me because it's smaller than a tennis court, slower than a squash court, and I can be slightly competitive, which is really really great. So yeah, man, those are some things. I think there's probably a lot more to share, but that's a good starting point, I hope. And um, yeah, it's epic that you have a diverse, interested group of listeners that like to hear about some of the things that make people tick, I guess.
I don't think you're doing enough. I think you need to add a few more
I
things
need
on
to like let me just rattle off like 10 more things here.
there.
I'm
the
growing a limb in my room as well, just so you know. Maybe I'll be walking properly next year. Also, I tell a lot of one-legged jokes. Like I think humor is such a beautiful healer. It's just breaks the ice. If I when my friends start making one-legged jokes, appropriately or inappropriately, TBC. But when that starts happening, then I know,
yeah,
okay, there's a level of comfortability there that's really great. And for me, you have to laugh at life. You have to find the moments to smile at things that you can't control. You
yeah.
know, because the negatives are always there. The negatives are always going to be there, or the challenges. You know, however you want to kind of see them. So find some find some damn positives as well. Don't really like go searching just for positive things, but life is about choices, you know. Um, you can choose to be vulnerable, you can choose to share, you can choose to say yes, you can choose to say no. And I think being okay with, like you said, you asked a question about like, you know, you know, where do you think your life is going to go when you know, from an acting perspective or from studying. And like still don't have all the answers, which is great. And to be able to say that's also great. You know, I'm very excited about what the next 10 years look like. Um, and really excited about connecting with other people and, you know, even to do things like this. It's just, I feel very privileged. So I also just, you know, I'm grateful to have a bit of a platform where I can connect with people and hear their stories and hear a bit of your story as well. Maybe I'll be interviewing you on my podcast soon.
Yeah.
You can you can delve into some of your things that you enjoy doing. Are you quite an outdoors human being? I see there's an Under Armour top there. There has to be some sport connection here if you're a tennis enthusiast as well.
Yes, I try to take trail walks as much as I can. Like anytime I go on a vacation, it's like get me in the water, get me on a jet ski,
Mm,
get me in a kayak, paddleboard, anything like that because I love being outdoors.
mm,
Sorry, it's the heat is a craziness. But any way I can get outdoors, it's just like a sanctuary to me. Like
mm,
I will
mm,
go nearby my house and there's like a river, like a huge river, and there's just a path that just walks right along it. And to me, it's just like I could just sit on the edge of the cliff and just look out into the water, and then I'm like home.
mm,
Like it's just
mm,
it's nice to me, and that's why I just
mm,
enjoy.
mm. I think, you know, that's beautiful. I think that that connectedness is something that not everyone makes time to do. Even myself, to we're always busy doing something. We're always like rushing into the next thing. And I think to find a moment to actually just settle and listen, that's when the thoughts start coming through, you know, and that's when you get frustrated with like meditation because you go, oh, I'm not hearing anything, I'm not feeling anything. And sometimes like going into nature and getting really present, A, it makes you really appreciate where you are, but B, it forces you to just slow down a little bit. And like I think being an amputee sometimes it's literally an act of patience because you have to slow down. Like you're literally forced to slow down and and really appreciate where you are. Like I now when I walk, obviously a lot more challenging and like slopes play a role, like how long I can be outdoors plays a role. But I'm always really just stoked when I can come back from a walk or come back from a hike and just yeah, I've been able to do that, you know, and still being able to step out and do that. So um yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of slow down to speed up, you know, and just get present and not have to necessarily have something to constantly distract you and constantly keep your mind going at 1,000 beats per second, you know.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
I think it's a quite a meaty question. I think, you know, what helps, I think what, if I had to think about rising to the challenge, I think what really helps is leaning into what brings you joy, brings you a bit of fear, brings you a bit of kind of ignites that kind of sense of adventure and life in you. It makes embracing difficult things more meaningful, but also easier. If you can lean into things that, whether they're challenging or not, but you know they're going to bring you joy in some way, shape, or form, then the obstacle is the way, right? The thing that is there to challenge you becomes enjoyable because even if it's difficult, there's a lot that you're getting back. So I think, you know, if you are passionate about, you know, sketching, if you're passionate about pottery, if you're passionate about hiking or endurance running, whatever those obstacles are, if you know that that thing's going to bring you joy, lean into it because it can take you on a really, really exciting journey. Like for me, the ocean is something that has brought me has taken a lot away, but it's also brought a lot back into my life, and it's brought a lot back into my life because I've stepped back into that space. But I never knew we would make a film about my story. I never knew I'd, you know, represent my country in surfing. I never knew that I'd have this spiritual connection with the ocean. So I would say like one of the most important things is lean into things that scare you a little bit, but lean into things that make you happy or that excite you, that kind of get that little flame going and go like, okay, cool. I don't know what's going to happen here, but even if it's strange, just really, really go for it. And um, I think as well, don't be scared to share and be vulnerable. I think the more we have opportunities to share and be vulnerable with our communities and with the people that are following us in our journey, however big that community is, you can really touch someone else's life. You
Mhm.
know, you can really inspire someone else to rise to the challenge. And I've seen it. You know, I've seen people when they've shared, even they want to do their first half marathon or their first 5 kilometer, or they want to start a new business, or they want to, you know, learn a new sport. When you share that, you're putting it out into the universe, and something comes back. Whether it's someone joins you, or someone holds you accountable, or someone checks up on you, or someone supports you. Like there's people that are going to form part of your tribe by you building your tribe. You know, um, and yeah, so yeah, just to reiterate those things, just lean into what makes you happy, and embrace the challenges that come with that, and also embrace not necessarily knowing where it's going to go because that's the exciting part. Um, and then the second thing would be, you know, to really share, to share where you're at, and to be honest and vulnerable because yeah, I think we don't necessarily realize how much that ripple can kind of spread across the ocean, and who sees it and who's impacted by it. So um and you've got one life, man. Like I know it sounds very cheesy, but we've got one life, and not that you want to get to the end of it and just sit with regrets, but it's when you are confronted with that thought of like, am I going to regret this one day?
Mhm.
Probably do it because you might just remember that voice. It's not easy, you know. It's also okay, like to know that it's not going to be easy. I'm in that space right now where not everything's easy and always manageable, and you don't know what's going to happen, and like you kind of have to take all of that, put it here, and then move forward and just acknowledge that all of this stuff is here, you know, and be okay with that. So hopefully that's not too much of a messy answer.
Well, Caleb, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to all your listeners. It's really a privilege to share my story and to connect. And yeah, just thank you for you. It's a vote of confidence for me to keep putting one foot in front of the other and to keep going. And yeah, thank you for also encouraging me to challenge myself. So appreciate you, man.